Rest is productive. And by the end of this video, I'm going to give you a reframe to help you understand why rest is possibly the one thing that's missing in your daily routine. So, where do we start? About 2 months ago, I started on this journey of creating content. Even if I go further back than that, almost like 5 years ago, I've been thinking about working through and creating my own business. So the way that we're taught to work and the way that I've worked traditionally in my professional career, in my day-to-day work, is really this nonstop kind of go. One of the things that really struck me the first time that I worked through like a full year cycle of being an owner in the world of pharmacy is that usually the end of the year around like November, December time is really busy. There's end of year as well as like flu and vaccine season where I am. And that's like just a really busy, crushing time. It's huge for sales and it's huge for like pharmacy services as well. What I thought at the end of that first year was that when January rolled around, there would be a time to pause and breathe. And what I realized was that first week of January, it was almost like reset. Let's get back to the way that things were and continue to sell and continue to keep pushing. And the first year that this happened, I thought, oh, maybe there will be a lull. You kind of like move through. You hope that summer will be a little bit quieter, but things kind of continue to roll. They might decrease a little bit, but there's always something constant going on. And then, of course, the next year rolls around. Christmas season comes around, holiday season comes around, vaccine season comes around, and it's all just super busy. So that's kind of the way that we're trained and learn that we learn to work. If you think about even further back, going to school, you're in school 8 hours a day, you have homework, and then you have assignments, and then when you leave in the summertime, you have a couple months off. But usually that time, at least in my experience, has always been time for doing something. Like just it felt like resting, lying, sleeping in, watching television was not really productive. It was almost borderline frowned upon because if somebody asks you, "What did you do all summer?" and you respond with, "I just lay in bed and sleep and watch TV all day," um, it could be met with judgment. Okay, so then we're kind of like expected to always be productive, always be producing, to be doing something. And that continues through school, that continues in business, that continues when you're working to make your own business. And when you're working on your own thing, whether you have your own business, your own passion project, or even just like your day-to-day work, uh, we sometimes forget to rest. We have weekends, we have the evenings, but those are usually filled with all sorts of other things, taking care of the house, taking care of kids, family, obligations to friends and people. You're always going around, maybe doing something, filling up every moment. So when are you resting and why is rest productive? How can it be productive? Because you're not doing anything. Sleeping in, what's that going to do for you? Watching television, what's that going to do for you? Well, I think that in the recent past, and I'll talk about this recent story here, in the last 2 months, I've been working on being consistent with producing content, with doing my best to get out there. I did some pre-work and I was doing my best to kind of follow along with different programs to say, this is what I need to be doing, and this is the timeline to set a calendar and all of this. And it was effective in the sense that I was actually doing things and kind of getting closer and closer to um, where I wanted to be with my work at this time. And at the same time, it felt like there were times when I was just pushing and moving through things. In some ways, for myself, I noticed that when my human design not self shows up in the form of bitterness, to feel like I need to create something just because I feel like I need to create something. And because I was in this creation mode, I had this mindset of like, I'm not really in a space to consume things, to learn new things. And traditionally, the new things that I learned would be either around hypnosis, human design, spirituality, metaphysics, some of those like bigger topics. And I spent a lot of time diving into that. And that's really what the basis of my program is built on. However, it just didn't feel like the right thing. It just felt like I spent maybe the last 5 years just really immersed in all of that. And it just wasn't a break. It felt like going to those things was almost work. Now, on the other hand, there are things around the house the last log that I did, that I filmed recently, I was talking about my garden and how it was like really not in the best shape. And that kind of felt like work in one way. However, what happened in the last 2 days, so 2 days before, in the last 2 days before filming this, I took a break. I stopped filming my daily logs. I broke my streak of maybe like 51 or 52 days, and that's okay. I returned to it today. And I just kind of hands off everything on my business. Forgetting about like, oh, like what am I going to offer? What's the offer I'm going to put out? What's the messaging I'm going to put out? What's the social content that I want to put out? It was like, if I look back now, putting all of those things, like doing all of those things, while it was fun and something that I wanted to do, also started to feel like work because I was like moving through and I wasn't giving myself time to rest. In the times, down times, I would still be in the back of my mind, like probably right here, just like still thinking about it and thinking about like, oh, like I need to do this thing so that I can get this thing and get to the next step and get to the next step and be productive and be producing, and kind of like I lost sight of what the heck I was making any of this for. So those 2 days were a really good reset. What I found myself doing actually was diving into YouTube and books. I had a book called Regenerative Gardening or Regenerative something, talking about like the garden. And then I started watching this video that I had referenced before, Anne of All Trades, and she was talking about how to make like a lazy garden. And I love that idea because it was like really looking and learning from nature. And in nature, we have cycles as well. So there's like spring when things start to bloom. There's summer when there's like full sun and everything's growing and beginning to thrive. Then there's the fall season where things start to slow down a little bit. And then winter where basically it's cold and things generally don't grow. And there's a bit of a rest and replenish kind of cycle. And looking at all of that, I realized that one, I still really enjoyed learning. I just was over, I was just over learning more about the things that I already had substantial information about. Now, part of that I could tie to my Human Design one line, The Investigator, where I feel like um, oftentimes needing more information to feel like I'm ready. And what this period of rest has taught me is that when I stopped, I didn't go to those things because I didn't need to learn more about them. It's not to say I don't know everything about all of these topics, but I know enough to move forward with it. So then it wasn't fun to kind of explore because I wasn't exploring. So then looking to learn is still something that is deeply enjoyable to me and deeply restful to me, because like taking in that new information, what I find, especially with my 4323 channel of structuring, is that I've started to draw connections between the things that I'm learning about in regenerative gardening and then putting it in towards the business work that I'm doing. Now, there's a great book out there called Regenerative Business by, her first name is Sam, and her last name is Garcia, Sam Garcia. And it's an amazing book talking about how to take your business and create it and tend to it like like an ecosystem and putting all of these things together. And of course, for me, being a defined ajna, I have this very like specific way of needing to structure and understand things for my own understanding. And I found that while that book was like really engaging and I loved it so much, I found difficulty like finding the place to put it in because I just didn't know where to start. And it's no fault of the book, and it's no fault to anywhere else. It's completely a me thing. And if you don't understand why you are always the problem and I am always my problem, you can go back to the first video in this Half-Truth series where I talk about how we are our own biggest problems. So then what I found was that in learning these things from different sources, hearing the same things over and over again, being introduced to this idea of regenerative gardening, regenerative ecosystems, and then regenerative business, I've started to put all of these things together. And it's beginning to structure, and it's helping me take all these different pieces that are floating around in my head and bring them down together. And none of that would be possible without the rest that I had taken. So when I look back at the 2 days of rest, really what I was trying to do was just get away from everything, to stop thinking about all of the things that I needed to do, stop thinking about where I was in the world, stop thinking about where my business was and how like Maybe I haven't made a single sale. Maybe I haven't gotten 100 likes on a video. Maybe I don't have 1,000 prescribers on Instagram or wherever. Forgetting about all of those things and just taking some time to create space. I took a lot of naps. I spent time with family. We went to a concert. We went to see friends. And I was learning about gardening. I went to the garden center. I bought a couple bags of dirt, bought some mulch. I was outside, and it was interesting actually going out there to really like do things with my hands, to understand like, yes, there is a pace that things grow. As I was watering the waterbed, the raised bed yesterday, I was looking at a plant that had wilted, and I was watering it, and I was thinking, why is it not unwilting right away? And I knew that that's a little bit like silly. There were two reasons. One, the water wasn't getting deep enough, but two, it's like you don't water a plant right away and expect it to spring back to life. So it taught me to pause, because that time in between, it's not that nothing's happening, things are always happening. So when you're thinking about rest, and if rest feels like a bad word, it feels like this thing that you can't do, the reframe here is that rest creates space. When you create space, that allows you to be more productive in new and different ways. So if you think that rest is not productive, pause for a moment and consider why that is for yourself. And then reframe it to, when you're resting, you are creating space for new things to come in. You're going to open your filters up to see and collect new information. You're going to find new connections. And you might even look at old things. When you return back to the work that you were doing before, you'll come back to it with renewed energy. You're going to get a recharge for sure. So take this time to rest. Remember that. So remember, whenever you have a negative thought, pause a moment, consider it, and see how you can reframe it. Until next time, I'll see you in the ether.